Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Today we're going to take a look at the Grand Water Trine that is forming in the sky as the moon moves through the later degrees of Scorpio, and as Mercury and Mars in the later degrees of Scorpio are also approaching the same configuration. I've got a list of 10 things to watch for today, but we're going to break it into two parts. I'm going to give you 5 today and 5 tomorrow. I think that'll make things a little bit more manageable, but I've spent a lot of time and put a lot of care into giving you some of the most useful ways to think about water. Water is about to be our teacher. Water is about to be the symbolic element through which we see and experience a lot of things between now and the beginning of December. And so I hope that this approach will be useful and will really give you some solid ways of engaging with your experiences, reflecting upon them as you're in them, which is always the goal with astrology. Anyway, that's our agenda for today. Before we dive in, remember to like and subscribe, turn on the notification bell for updates, hype us if you feel like it. You can find transcripts of any of these daily talks on the website, which is nightlightastrology.com. And what I want to turn you on to today is our upcoming talk. Check out the live talks, and on Thursday evening, I'm giving a talk on the second house. If you want to learn more about the ancient philosophical roots of the money house and how to read it in your chart more sensitively, more carefully, to understand more about your karma around money, check out that talk. That's going to be a really fun one. You get the recording if you can't attend live. Go to Silent Sundays under the events page, and you'll see that we are now holding a free monthly meditation gathering once a month on Sunday mornings. You can join us on the 26th of this month for 30 minutes of silence in community. I think this is just my way of trying to give back a little bit more and help people build meaningful bridges between astrology as a spiritual practice and other forms of spiritual self-care. To me, there's no doctrine or dogma around this gathering. It's just literally, let's get quiet together because it's valuable. Anyway, go to the courses page. The big thing we're promoting is the upcoming Year 1 course, Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic. Our fall enrollment period is open and underway. It begins on November 8th. You see an informational video at the end of today's content telling you everything you need to know about the course. I cannot wait for this. It is a really special time to be studying astrology in the next year, as Uranus and Pluto are forming a trine between Aquarius and Gemini. Like, you can't get a more powerful astrologically themed transit for learning the language of Hermes. Like, I couldn't recommend this as a good period for studying astrology. And I wouldn't be surprised to see astrology popping up a lot in the news in the next couple of years anyway. But anyhow, at the bottom, you'll find the early bird payments. Check those out. There's need-based tuition assistance. This is so important. If you're someone who wants to study, but you need to work with a monthly budget, you need to be very careful that you're not living outside of your means. Please do take advantage of the tuition assistance. It gives you a range of options to choose from, a sliding scale that you can budget around. So we make sure that that's there so that nobody's priced out of studying something sacred. We have been offering sliding scale based models of our classes for going on 16 years. It's a core of part of our vision at Nightlight is to make things accessible. So anyway, check that out. Again, you'll learn more about the course at the end of today's content. Every day I've been saying one thing that I think makes our classes worth taking. Live readings are the best way to learn, and we have a lot of those at Nightlight. When you come study with us, you're going to see me do live. All the theory, all the technique, all the history. What good is it if you can't actually see what it looks like when consulting with another person in an hour, like a consultation practice would look like? And so all of our programs, Year 1 especially, the last third of the program is dedicated to chart practice and you getting to see live clients come in and see the theory and the technique actually demonstrated. Whether you're wanting to practice for other people or not, it gives you a template with which to work when you're reading your own chart or your family members or your friends, or if you decide to practice for other people. So on that note, hope to see you guys in class soon. All right, now, next, we are switching over to transits. Let's take a look at what's happening today. This is Wednesday, October 22nd. Now, what I want you to notice is that we have Mercury and Mars. They're separating from their conjunction. We've been exploring that a lot lately. That means Mercury is about to hit Jupiter at 24 degrees, and then Saturn at 26 and Neptune at 29, and Mars is going to do the same thing. This is our Grand Water Trine forming. What is so special about today is that the moon is going to activate this and start opening the Grand Trine portal, you could say. I don't love the word portal, but I used it there. You can make a note of it. He used the word portal. He didn't feel too much shame. So there's the moon in Scorpio. Moon in Scorpio making a trine to Jupiter, making a trine to Saturn, making a trine to Neptune, all doing so today and tomorrow. And then what makes that, again, kind of like opening the door, opening the floodgates, whatever image comes to mind, is that by Friday, Mercury will then be entering the Grand Water Trine, connecting in a trine to Jupiter. And then on Saturday, October 25th, we will see Mercury moving through the trines to Saturn and Neptune. And that then Mars starts the same process. And we can see that Mars will go through that process then between now and the end of the month. And so really it's this Moon in Scorpio period that launches us into the end of October, where every day there's a lot of water in the sky, so to speak. Not only that, but then as we go through the month of November, we're going to see that this repeats. Once the sun gets into the range of the Grand Water Trine, about mid-November, we're going to see that a new moon forms. And that new moon forms in late Scorpio as Mercury is retrograding back into Scorpio and as Venus is also coming through Scorpio. So the Grand Water Trine is reiterated. And then we're going to see the exact same thing happen in late November and early December through Mercury and Venus coming through the last portion of Scorpio as well. So again, Grand Water Trine repeats. What I have for you today are 5 things to watch for. I actually have 10, but I'm breaking them into 2 parts. And this list is really, in some ways, it's bigger than astrology. It's really a variety of ways of thinking about the symbolism of water in many different ancient spiritual religious traditions from all over the planet, modern and ancient, actually. And I think approaching it from this way is going to give us like a toolkit symbolically as we move through a very watery space. It's good to have a lot of different ways of conceptualizing. Oh, there's water. Oh, wait, here it is. It's not, I mean, if all we said was, oh, it's going to be really emotional. I mean, that's not wrong. Water definitely connected to emotion in astrology, but water has so many interesting correlates. And so the idea behind this talk is to give you a lot of different ways of looking for water. So let's get into it. All right, number 1. In ancient Egypt, although ancient Egypt, by the way, does have some actual connections to Hellenistic astrology, a lot of the early philosophy of Hellenistic astrology was actually thought to be tied to Egypt through things like Platonism and Pythagoreanism, which were influenced by Egyptian mysticism. But either way, coming from the Egyptian religious view, water was tied to the soul's journey through this lifetime and also through the afterlife. The Nile River, not that I'm some great Egyptologist or anything like that, but this is pretty basic. I'm sure many of you may be already familiar with this. The Nile River was not just thought of as a river, but as a conduit of the realm of the gods, the realm of the divine. And the way that that realm was connected to this earthly realm was through the medium of water that the Nile was an embodiment of. And so the Nile River was thought of as the water of life, the generative force of the gods or the cosmos itself, the source of life and the soul itself, as a medium for it, as a medium that carries things into this world from a divine world and out of this world back to the divine world. Water was thought of in that way. Now, the reason that I want to say that I'm pointing to this is because, broadly speaking, I don't think it's like there's one day that's like more filled with death or birth than another. You know, most days across the, if you take most days of the year, I'm sure that there's some kind of average number of births and deaths or something like that. What I want you to think about instead of, oh, there's going to be a lot more births, so there's going to be a lot more deaths, is that the portals through which souls travel in and out of bodies or realms or dimensions, worlds, psychic worlds, as well as literal physical worlds or lifetime to lifetime, are often associated with water. And so when there's a huge formation of Grand Water Trines, not just this one, but several between now and December, one way of thinking about it is that you're going to see souls leaving this world and souls coming into this world. And maybe it's not so much that there's more or less of it, as much as it is that your perception of it is heightened. I think of the moment when my kids were born, there was this feeling of stepping into the river of life itself. Oh, I am participating in something that my wife is giving birth, but 30,000 years ago, a woman was in a river doing this, and I felt connected to that. And so, one of the beautiful things that water can do is when births and deaths occur, when souls are leaving their bodies and coming into their bodies, which often, by the way, funeral rites were associated with water and purification of the body, cleansing of the body, birth obviously coming out of the waters of the mother. The idea here is that there's a sense of being connected to the rivers of life and to the channels through which life flows. Death being just one of the transitions that are really all connected through the medium of water. And so just being aware of life and death and how they're flowing and transitions that are occurring through a channel like a Grand Water Trine, I think that becomes a very valuable way of thinking about it. I would not be surprised if there were, for example, when you see big arrangements of elements, there are often natural disasters that occur relative to the element, like floods or typhoons or hurricanes, that kind of thing would not be uncommon in a Grand Water Trine configuration. Now, I can't remember like what hurricane season is or when it is or whatever. I'm not sure if that even fits. And I'm certainly not predicting anything specific, right? But more so that there's, it's like in Star Wars. Remember when they blow up Princess Leia's planet, and I think it was Obi-Wan said he sensed a disturbance in the Force as if 1,000 voices all cried out at once and then were silent. I think that the increased awareness of souls coming and going, of life and our connection to this vast history of birth and death that is planet Earth, and maybe not even just ours, but the planet, other species. One thing that water is said to be connected to is empathy. And so becoming aware of the substance of the soul, the transitions and passages of the soul, the movements of life coming into bodies and out of bodies, and the awareness of transmigration and of the collective dimension of life in the cosmos, I think all of that gets heightened. Again, not that there's necessarily more or less births or deaths, but more so that our awareness of birth and death as channels of transition heightens somehow, and we become more aware of the collective dimensions of birth and death that we all share in. So that's one way of thinking about it that really comes from ancient Egypt and the Nile and the river of life and the channels through which souls flow. So I thought that would be, a valuable way for all of you to perhaps think about these Grand Water Trines. Certainly it is for me. Number two is the unconscious. So coming back into, say, the modern era and Jungian psychology, Carl Jung viewed water as a symbol of the unconscious mind, which is to say that there are these vast depths of the psyche. The psyche is a word, by the way, psyche is a word for soul. They're the same word. And so the sense that, like Heraclitus said, the soul is explored forever to a depth beyond report. The sense that I am a very deep, deep living being. I am mysterious. Parts of me come out and show themselves, but it's like a game of hide and seek. I'm there and then I'm gone again. I think water, a big Grand Water Trine configuration, can allow a space for the soul to sort of come forth from its hiding places. I like to think about the soul, and I've said this before, kind of told this story before, like deer. When I was in graduate school, I was living in a little cottage, and in the morning in this little cottage on my grandfather's land, there would be deer that would come out into the yard and eat. And if I was really, really careful and quiet, I could move and sit on the window ledge, like the bay window, and watch them while I drank my tea. But I would have to be very quiet, even going to the kitchen and making my tea, all that stuff. And if I was very, very quiet, they would remain. But if I was at all let's call it heavy-footed, unconscious, fast, unaware, they would bolt. The soul is like that too in the Jungian tradition. In the tradition of depth psychology, the soul is something that for it to be seen and for its life to be understood and valued and taken care of requires a kind of subtlety. It requires things that help us to remain aware of things running below the surface that we're not always consciously aware of. So water's ever fluid, changing nature mirrors the way that there's like this hidden level at which our soul is alive and flowing along subtly beneath the surface. Dreams, synchronicities, chance encounters, experiences that we have under a grand water trine. It's as though everything is conspiring for the soul, that subtle, deep, invisible, watery space of identity, of selfhood, to sort of come to the surface and be seen. A powerful moment of recognizing, oh, there's the soul. It's often hiding, but now it's here. That doesn't, I think we often want that to lead to some kind of takeaway. This is what I got from seeing the soul, or it came up and it gave me this information. It gave me an instruction. It gave me a heroic purpose. It inflated my ego. It gave me more confidence or something like that. But honestly, the soul doesn't really work like that. When the soul is seen and recognized and valued, it's more like that subtle dance of finding a sweet spot when you're playing an instrument or doing art or connecting with a lover. To be in touch with our own soul requires a soft, gentle touch and the allowing for something to be elusive rather than definitive. So thinking about the unconscious right now, it's like something that we don't always get to see because of how subtle it is could become its presence being amplified is special and important. We also have to be careful because when it comes up, it's just let it speak. Don't try to take something from it, All right. Okay. Number 3 is waterways, water as channels. Many indigenous cultures, such as Native American, African, South American, see water as a bridge to the spiritual world, the world that creates this world, because water was thought of as generative of life. And so waters, rivers, lakes, oceans are thought of as spaces through which the transcendental plane can be accessed, the plane that somehow from which creation reigns. It's like the spiritual sky from which the material cosmos itself originally rained down. And so the bodies of water are thought of as places that reflect the sky. You can see the sky reflected in the lake, and the sky is the place from which the water comes. It rains down, and the material cosmos itself is thought in some traditions to have rained down from a transcendental plane. And so water becomes a reflective space to get back to something original. That's why the water is the medium through which the ancestors are often contacted and worshipped in bodies of water, for example. But anything that allows us to get to that transcendental plane, that allows us to become reflective of something higher. It's amazing how, we tend to just be so narrow, like water is emotions. But if we think a little bit more deeply about what is an emotion, and one thing, I don't think there's just one thing an emotion is, but one thing an emotion is or can be is, like the moon, a reflective dish. Emotions, as they come up, are teeming with reflective images. And so when a grand water trine forms, it's as though there's this big body of water that can help us reflect on things, the gods, the ancestors, that can help us reflect on a higher understanding of something. As the emotions appear in the mirror of the body, if we take a little time to be quiet, this is one of the reasons why I love silence so much. I've always had meditation practices, but our silent Sundays, like, what's the value of silence? Because as the emotions come up and you sit with them and allow them to move, it's like you're looking into the lake. And then you can see things reflected in the emotions. And the things reflected in the emotions are often, there's a lot of wisdom there. The wisdom of the ancestors comes through water. The wisdom of the gods comes through water. The wisdom of our origins comes through water. The wisdom of the origin of an emotion that we're feeling comes through water. Understanding origins doesn't mean that we solve something. It means we relate to something at a deeper level. We can find more compassion, empathy, understanding, sensitivity, wisdom that's felt, that's embodied. So think about the appearance of this big grand water trine as this channel, this reflective medium through which you can find other things. You can find access to origins. You can find access to gods, ancestors, feelings, etc. So number 4 is, in alchemy, water is understood as the stage of solutio. And we've talked about this. We talked about this maybe a month ago now. Where there is a stage where something needs to be purified and released, purged emotionally, like grief or big feel. In our house, we talk to our kids about big feelings, right? Like Mr. Rogers. So where there is a huge amount of water, there is a huge opportunity for purification, healing, release, processing of emotions, and for things that have been hard or rigid to become softened and smooth, and for boundaries to open up so that new things can form. In place of old, rigid, practical, dry, earthy things, the earth becomes like clay. Now you can mold it, reshape it, and that often also allows for stagnation to be healed, cleansed, for toxins to even be flowing out. So the solutio in alchemy is another way of thinking of an approaching grand water trine. One that if you want to learn more about, you go back in my videos and find the talk on alchemy and the grand water trine. Number 5, okay, well, let's just get right down to it. Classically, one of the things that water can represent are both desire and emotions. So one of the things that I find really interesting is that in Vedic philosophy, yoga philosophy, emotions and desire are really intimately connected. A lot of our emotions that we experience are fundamentally connected to what we desire and what we're attached to. So if I'm sad, it might be because I didn't get something that I was hoping for, or something was taken away from me that I loved. So desire and attachment, aversion and fear, what I want, what I don't want, what I'm attached to, what I push away, these are so closely connected to emotions that when a grand water trine comes up, our emotions can teach us about our desires. Our desires can teach us about our emotions, and we can refine our desires and our emotional responses. It's not bad to have emotions. In my opinion, it's not bad to have desires. In the Vedic tradition, even though we're seeking enlightenment and moksha, which is in a sense a kind of letting go or releasing of attachments and entanglements, still it's human, and you can't bypass having desires or emotions. That's definitely not the point of yoga. And in fact, one of the most annoying things you'll ever find is when you go to yoga studios or you meet people who are into yoga and they pretend as if they're so balanced and even keeled that they don't have emotions, they don't have desires, they don't have attachments. It's like, yeah, you're not level 10. Come on. That's an act, which will be provoked at some point, and the jig will be up, or however they say that. So the point is, we don't want to be without desire or emotion when we're, at probably most of us at our level of evolution are not going to be monks, Still, I always say astrology is for monastic types who are still living in the city. Desire and emotions can be refined, and they can mature, and they can get more sophisticated. I can learn how to modulate my desires, want something, but also be able to let go of it if it doesn't happen. Love something, be attached to it, but also be secure enough to let it have space to breathe. That can have a tremendously beneficial impact on my emotions relative to my attachments, desires, aversions, fears, etc. I can be scared of something, and I can know how to modulate my emotional response relative to that fear. These Grand Water Trine is a profound opportunity for us to explore the connection between attachments, desires, aversions, and emotional responses. So how can we just get a little bit more emotionally secure, emotionally intelligent? That's a big part of this, I think. All right. That is it for today. Tomorrow we'll do part 2, where I'll give you 5 more things to watch for given this big watery signature in the sky. Remember, the water is coming through today, tomorrow with the moon in Scorpio. Then it keeps evolving as Mercury hits all of the trines, and then Mars. So we'll say that all again tomorrow in case you forget. But that's it for today. Next is going to be an informational video about the Year 1 program. Come study with us. The best way to learn is to learn technique, history, philosophy in a very hermetic way. Studying astrology at Nightlight is like moving through a mandala of interconnected philosophical ideas and techniques from ancient astrology. But then at the end, what good is any of it if you don't learn to see it practiced artfully, intuitively, in a counseling dynamic that honors a soul sitting in front of you in real time, where there's something actually at stake? That's the best way to learn. You're going to love it if you come study with us. So that's what I've got for today. We'll see you again tomorrow. Bye. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking around. I'm excited to tell you about our upcoming program, Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic. This is our first year course in Hellenistic astrology, and it begins again this November. In this video, I'm going to tell you about the course, the format of the course, and how to register. So let's go ahead and get into it. What is this course about? Well, if you are not familiar, ancient Hellenistic astrology is the earliest and original form of horoscopic astrology. All of the subsequent forms and schools of astrology that have existed over thousands of years come from these philosophical and theoretical roots. And so what you're doing when you study Hellenistic astrology is you're going back to understand the why behind absolutely everything. Why were there ever such a thing as houses and signs in the first place? How were the planets ever assigned to rule various portions of the zodiac in the first place? How do you use the categories of essential dignity, and why were they ever created in the first place? If you're someone like me, you like to know the why behind things, because once you understand the why, then you know how to use things more intuitively. So really the point of Hellenistic astrology, in my opinion, is not so much about going back and becoming a traditional astrologer or just being traditional for the sake of being traditional, as much as it is about grasping the roots of the entire system and paradigm. When you understand those roots, you have more intuition and understanding, which allow for you to be much more artful and fluid in the way that you speak the language of astrology. We call this class Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic because while it is about going back to understand the philosophical, theoretical, technical roots of the tradition, it's also about fluidly bridging those things with modern astrology and all of its most unique contributions. For example, modern astrology has given us so much psychological depth and personal depth. And so in a modern astrological setting, you're going to get the ability to explore your own character, your own psychology, and you're going to be able to utilize astrology for a process of healing and personal transformation. But when you pair that with ancient astrology, and it's almost like predictive karmic analytics, you really have a full toolkit to work with. And so that's also a great mission of ours at Nightlight, is to bridge ancient and modern forms, which is why we call the program Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic. So that's just a little kind of overview of the program. If you want to know more about the specifics of the curriculum and of the syllabus, what I encourage you to do is go over to nightlightastrology.com, click on the courses page, go to the first year course, scroll down, and you'll see this over 12 months you'll learn about. And here you're going to see more of a detailed breakdown of the curriculum itself. I can promise you that if you've studied astrology in modern context, but you've never gone back to the ancient roots, while some of these topics may look familiar to you and you go, oh, I've already learned about that. Unless you've studied them from the Hellenistic perspective, I guarantee that you are not going to be familiar with this content. Hellenistic astrology is mind-blowingly new and interesting for most people. And if you've never studied it, again, don't assume that anything on this list is something you're going to be familiar with. In that way, the program is really ideal for a variety of different people, and I'll say more about that in a second. So what is the format of the course? Let's go to that next. Scroll down and you're going to see that the course includes 30 online webinars that I lead throughout the year. Over the course of a year together, I have 30 classes that are broken into different units of material. In between those classes, we have breakout study sessions with your course director and 2 TAs. They're going to lead you through Q&A sessions and tutoring sessions to make sure that you have a lot of support in between major units of study. In addition, we also have an interactive group forum discussion where you can ask questions year-round and get an answer within a business day in the student forum, where a lot of people also connect and build community. Lots of people in that forum also develop like little meetup groups outside of class. That's very common in all of our programs. It's a very community loving, warm space where anyone's also welcome. Throughout the course, you're also going to find that for every lesson, if you're just there as a hobby student, you can just listen to the webinars. They're all recorded for you. So if you can't make the live webinars, everything is housed on the website as recordings. I'd say about 40 or 50% of our students are going to be following along at their own pace, whereas the other half might be attending the live webinars. But it's really kind of, if you can attend a few and then 1 week you got to be gone, the recordings are always there. You have lifetime access to everything in the course, so it's not a big deal. For every lesson as well, if you're someone who wants to go really, really deep, maybe you have the intention to practice professionally, this course is set up with an optional certification exam at the end from our school, from our program. So you can, if you want to build that resume and develop the credentials from our programs, you can do that, but it's optional, so you don't have to. And outside of every lesson, we have recommended reading. We have supplemental bonus content, all of which is optional, but it's there for people who might want a lot more, whereas some people will take the webinars themselves, and that'll be plenty. So it's really flexible in that way. Also, this is one program within 4 years of curriculum that are meant to go together. And so most people who come through our first year program will end up taking our second year program, where we develop forecasting and prediction and transit tracking techniques. Our third year program, which is aimed at counseling and psychology. So psychological counseling skills is our third year program. And then the Oracle Within, which is our exploration of the philosophical, spiritual roots of the divinatory oracular tradition of astrology. So there's a lot of material there. We also have another 1 year program in horary astrology for some people who want to add that predictive tool to their toolkit. So there's just a lot of material at Nightlight that this class is actually just one part of, which can be taken standalone, or for some people, they get into it, they're going to love it. You're going to hang out with us for 3 or 4 years worth of content. This program is ideal for a number of different types of students of astrology. I'll say that for starters. So let's see here. I'll stop sharing this. So we have there's a profile of the typical students who come through our courses. One is going to be people who just want a very guided introduction to ancient astrology because you've never had it before. Maybe you're only familiar with modern, and you want that guided, structured approach to learning traditional for the first time. Also, people who are brand new to astrology in general, there's no better place to start than at the roots of the ancient foundations. So whether you're a total beginner or just a beginner to Hellenistic, this is a great place to start. If you are someone who's been around astrology for a long time, but you've never had a guided, structured approach to Hellenistic astrology, again, this is a great place to start. I promise you, Hellenistic is very different than what you're familiar with, and you're going to need a guided and structured approach at some point in time. I also think for people who are looking for a lineage, which means not just a bunch of information, but a practitioner-specific based approach where you get to see a practitioner work with clients. You get to hear how a practitioner has prioritized different techniques and why. You're going to get a structured, spiritually grounded focus at Nightlight as well, where if you're looking for someone who practices astrology but also values grounded, everyday spiritual practice, that's Nightlight. If you want a community that's been in the industry for a long time now, this is our 16th year of teaching programs and guiding students through trainings. So all of those things, if they matter to you, this is a great place to study. It's a warm community atmosphere. It's spiritually grounded. It's focused. It's academically rigorous. It's going to provide you the appropriate preparation for practicing professionally, especially if you go through all of our programs. But also for those who are just curious and love astrology for your own personal interests, this is going to be a great place for you to learn and grow and thrive and feel like you have a lot of support around you in the curriculum, the teachers, the community, as you're developing, what might just be a personal interest or spiritual hobby. So that is who it's ideal for. Finally, how you register. You go over to the website. I'm going to take you back there. And it's at the bottom of the first year page. You're going to find that the early bird rate is in effect until October 24th. You can save significantly off the cost of the course when you use the early bird rate, where you can pay in full, or use an early bird installment rate plan. Both are going to save you off significantly off the cost of the course. But also at Nightlight, it has always been our mission to make sure that astrological education is accessible for everyone. So please, if you are someone who would love to take this course, but maybe you can only afford a small amount of tuition per month, use the tuition assistance. It is there. All you got to do is apply, you fill out the little form, you tell us your situation. If you're on a fixed income, if you're on a limited income, if you're part-time, if you're in between jobs, if you don't make a lot and you're on that fixed budget, we understand. We don't want people to hurt themselves trying to study something that is spiritual that we feel should be very accessible for everybody. So if you're someone who could use a little help to make this program happen, for whatever reason, maybe you're a single parent or you're on disability or you're retired or you're on a fixed income, whatever the case is, use that tuition assistance. Also, people in other countries who have extreme, exchange rates. We get it. So just use the tuition assistance and we'll be glad to make sure that the price point is accessible. For us, as a spiritual topic, we're a business at the end of the day, but we believe that this is a spiritual topic. And so accessibility has been a part of our model for 16 years now. We've never not had one of our training programs with affordable sliding scale-based prices for people who need it. So please take advantage of that. It's all there for you. I hope to see you in classes soon. And if you have any questions about the program whatsoever, direct them to us at info@nightlightastrology.com. And I hope to see you all coming up here in November. Take it easy, everyone. Bye.